You send a message, you see that little read receipt pop up right beneath the text bubble, and then, well, nothing.
Yeah, or you see those three little typing dots appear, they sort of dance around for a few seconds, and then they just vanish entirely.
God, that is the worst. Leaving you just staring at a totally blank screen is this universally agonizing modern experience, you know?
Absolutely.
In that specific moment, your brain just immediately starts spiraling, trying to somehow decode this empty space.
It is deeply unsettling. I mean, it feels like the modern equivalent of shouting into a canyon and not even getting an echo back.
Right.
The silence just feels like this active deprivation of information.
Exactly. So we're looking at a really fascinating stack of sociological research, communication theory, and some behavioral psychology papers today.
Yeah, it's a great collection of sources.
We're basically going to deconstruct exactly what happens in that agonizing blank space for today's deep dive. Because the core premise running through all these sources is that our modern intolerance for silence is fundamentally breaking how we relate to each other.
It really is.
We are going to explore why a lack of response doesn't automatically mean a relationship is just over.
Which, I mean, that runs completely counter to how our current communication environment actually operates.
Yeah, totally.
We've been heavily conditioned to treat response time as the ultimate metric of a relationship's health, right? Like, the faster the reply, the stronger the bond.
Right, the whole instant gratification thing.
Exactly. But the behavioral research we're looking at today suggests the exact opposite might actually be true in certain contexts.
Okay, so to get there, we really have to start with the foundational observation from the sociological papers. It's a simple premise, but a crucial one.
Right, the idea about the visible form of silence.
Yeah. When someone remains silent, the visible form of that silence tells us absolutely nothing about the actual state of the relationship. Like, a read receipt with no reply is just a blank canvas.
That's the thing. From the outside, a silence born of deep, careful thought looks mathematically identical to a silence born of total, utter rejection.
Wow. Yeah.
The data points are exactly the same, Zero output.
Which brings us to the central question, really framing this entire discussion. Think about the last time you were sitting there, staring at your phone, just waiting for a reply.
We've all been there.
Were you actually waiting for an answer to your specific question, or were you just desperately looking for a tiny microscopic signal that the connection between you and that person hadn't just evaporated?
And the psychology papers point out how quickly the human brain just conflates those two needs.
What do you mean by conflates them?
Well, we tell ourselves we need the data, right? Like the literal answer to our logistical or emotional question. But on a nervous system level, we just need the tether. We just need to know the rope hasn't been cut.
I really want to push on that mechanism a bit, though, because if all we are really looking for is just a signal that the relationship still exists, why does the human brain immediately jump to the absolute worst case scenario?
Oh, the doom spiral.
Yes. When someone doesn't text me back, my first thought is never, oh, they must be enjoying a lovely walk without their phone.
Right, of course not.
My first thought is literally, they hate me, I've offended them, I'm being exiled from the village forever.
It's so common.
Yeah.
And it really comes down to how human cognition handles uncertainty. Our nervous systems absolutely despise a void.
You really do.
An empty space without an explanation isn't just mildly annoying to the brain.
Mm-hmm.
It actually registers as a structural threat to our sense of reality.
Oh, a structural threat?
Yeah, the mind simply cannot tolerate an unmapped territory. So it just starts producing its own map to fill that empty space.
And because we are wired for survival, I'm guessing those maps are usually drawn with monsters on them. Like, we assume they are avoiding us. We assume we're being rejected. We assume the worst just so we can prepare for a defensive posture.
The texts refer to this as a need for negative certainty.
Negative certainty.
Yeah. We would actually rather be certain that we are hated than be uncertain about where we stand.
You know, I always think about this like getting a medical diagnosis.
Oh, that's a good comparison.
Right. You go to the doctor, they take an x-ray of your aching leg, and then you have to wait 3 days for the radiologist to read it. In those 3 days, you are just crawling out of your skin.
The waiting is the worst part.
It is. Part of you just wants the doctor to call and say, your leg is broken in 5 places, you need surgery. You'd literally prefer a terrible, painful diagnosis over the neutral ambiguity of waiting because, well, a diagnosis gives you a clear shape.
That is a perfect illustration of what the psychological research actually calls cognitive stabilization.
Cognitive stabilization.
Yeah, even a highly painful explanation gives the social situation a clear shape. It acts as a stabilization device for your anxiety.
Right.
Think about the mechanics of it. If you firmly decide you've been rejected by someone's silence, you suddenly have a script to follow.
Oh, totally. I have a playbook again. I know exactly what to do.
Exactly. You can get angry, you can complain to your friends, you can just block their number, or you can grieve and move on. The terrifying ambiguity is gone. You've stabilized your internal environment.
But the tragedy here, and I know this is a massive point in the source material, is that this shape we create, this whole negative story, it only describes our own desperate need for stability.
Yes.
It has absolutely zero correlation with the other person's actual internal state.
Not at all.
We are solving our own anxiety by projecting a definitive, violent end onto their silence. We are basically sacrificing the truth of the other person just to make ourselves feel grounded.
And that leads directly to the biggest misconception we hold about this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
We assume that because we see nothing, nothing is happening. We completely equate visible output with internal activity.
And the sources introduce this brilliant counter-concept to that. They say a single visible silence actually contains multiple, highly complex internal processes.
Right. It's not just a void.
Exactly. It's not an empty room. It is an active and visible processing layer.
The behavioral analysis outlines several specific mechanics operating inside this processing layer, too.
Like what?
Well, when someone goes quiet, they might be experiencing an emotion that simply hasn't formed into language yet. Or they might be actively postponing judgment because they recognize they just don't have all the facts.
Or they're doing what I have to do all the time, which is cooling down an immediate volatile reaction.
Oh, the angry text draft.
Yes, if someone drops a heavy text on me, my immediate reaction might be pure defensive anger. But I know if I type while angry, I will detonate the relationship.
So you force yourself to be silent to let the emotional temperature drop.
Exactly.
The texts also point out that a person might recognize their own lack of understanding in the moment. Or, they're actively searching for words that will address a difficult issue without damaging the relationship.
Which is really hard to do.
It is. Formulating that kind of nuanced language takes immense cognitive resources and a lot of time.
When you break it down like that, silence isn't a weapon at all. It's a piece of machinery.
A piece of machinery. I like that.
Yeah, I picture it like the clutch in a manual transmission car.
Oh, okay. Walk me through that.
Well, you have to press the clutch to temporarily disconnect the engine from the wheels. That mechanical space allows two things spinning at entirely different speeds to sync up without just grinding the gears to pieces.
Right.
Silence is basically the interpersonal clutch. It's that buffer sitting right between observing an event and reacting to it, allowing two differently paced humans to actually align.
I really like that mechanical framing. But consider what happens when we refuse to let that clutch exist.
We just grind the gears.
Pretty much. If we view that invisible processing layer as a defect or as an automatic rejection, we are demanding that human beings act like simplistic machines. Like, input must be immediately followed by output.
Let me play devil's advocate for a second, though, because I think a lot of listeners might be feeling this tension right now.
Sure, go for it.
Let's say we really don't understand someone. Isn't asking them for an explanation just normal, healthy communication? Like, why is it considered a bad thing to push and say, hey, what are you thinking? Talk to me.
So the sociological papers argue that the problem isn't the desire for an explanation itself. The problem is the speed and the pressure of the demand.
The pressure.
Yeah. When you demand an immediate explanation, you aren't just asking a neutral question. You are delivering a hidden, deeply coercive demand.
A demand that usually sounds something like, explain yourself right now in a format that I can easily understand.
That is the crux of it right there. In a format I can understand. Human emotion is inherently fluid and contradictory.
Very messy.
Extremely messy. Imagine the other person's internal state is this chaotic mix of, I don't know, I am deeply conflicted, I need some distance right now, and also, I really don't want to lose you.
That's a lot going on.
It is. That is a complex, wobbly, completely unformed state of being.
And when I come in and say, tell me what's going on right now, are we okay or not? I am violently compressing all of that fluidity.
Yes. You are forcing their complex, unformed reality into binary, acceptable categories.
Wow.
The demand for speed forces them to translate their messy internal state into clean, simple buckets. Yes or no, stay or leave, agree or reject.
Just to make it easier for me.
Exactly. You are demanding they erase their own nuance just so you can feel less anxious.
The text actually uses the phrase erasing difference for this.
Right.
By forcing a fast reply, we literally erase the space where the other person's unique perspective can safely exist. If I force you to reply in 10 seconds, I'm probably just going to get your automatic fight-or-flight reaction.
Yep, purely defensive.
But if I give you slow time, if I let the clutch do its job, I might get careful words that actually protect our relationship.
It's a trade-off. Early language lowers the questioner's uncertainty, yes, but it effectively removes the environment where the other person can safely exist in their own complexity.
That makes total sense in theory, but in practice, things get incredibly tricky.
They do.
Because if we shouldn't force an answer, does that mean we are just supposed to accept all silence unconditionally? Let's be real here. Sometimes people aren't deep in an invisible processing layer. Sometimes they are just ghosting you.
Oh, absolutely.
How do we even know the difference?
Well, the source material draws a very hard line here.
Yeah.
They do not romanticize silence.
Good.
The texts break it down into two distinct forms of silence that, unfortunately, look completely identical from the outside. Closing silence and open silence.
Closing silence being like a slammed door.
Exactly. It is a complete withdrawal. The person's rejecting contact, they offer no response, and the path back to the relationship is firmly closed. It is an exit strategy.
But open silence is more like leaving the door cracked.
Right.
The person might be stepping back, maybe adjusting the distance, postponing their response, but they are deliberately keeping a pathway open for the future.
The real dilemma is that a blank screen looks the exact same, whether the door is slammed or cracked. So how does someone maintain an open silence without sending the waiting person into a total panic?
Right. How do you signal that?
The sociological term for the solution is the lifeline of small connection signals.
These are like weak radar pulses.
Yeah.
You don't need to provide a long, detailed explanation of your psychic state. You just need to send a minimal signal.
Something as simple as, I need a minute to think.
Or, I'm reading this, but I can't reply yet. Even a simple, I don't know yet, does the job perfectly.
What's brilliant about those phrases is that they don't solve the logistical problem at all. They don't answer the core question.
Right.
But they prove that tether hasn't been cut. They basically say, I am still here, even if I don't have the words yet.
They actively hold the space open. But I know the research is also very quick to point out the ethical limits of silence here.
Yes, this is a vital caveat.
Silence is not automatically ethical just because you slap the label open on it. The texts dive into how silence, if unchecked, can become a form of invisible domination.
It creates a massive asymmetry in power. Think about it. If someone goes silent indefinitely and they refuse to give you those small connection signals, they are shifting the entire burden of interpretation onto you.
You're just left holding the bag.
Exactly. You are doing all the emotional labor of trying to translate their silence while they take zero responsibility.
And there are real-world situations where an open silence is just entirely unethical. Like, you can't just engage your invisible processing layer when your partner texts to ask who is picking up the kids from school.
Right, or in situations concerning physical safety.
Exactly. Open silence requires actively observing the vulnerability of the person who is waiting. The person taking the silence has a massive responsibility to acknowledge the asymmetry they're creating.
Silence should be a shared buffer that protects the relationship, not a unilateral weapon used to just evade responsibility.
Okay, so this violent compression of fluidity we've been talking about, where we force human emotion into binary yes or no boxes just to end the silence, we aren't just doing that to each other anymore.
We really aren't.
The sociological sources make an incredible pivot here. We are actively programming this exact impatience into our technology, which in turn reshapes our entire society.
The texts take a very hard look at artificial intelligence and its relationship to the void. We are designing systems that are fundamentally incapable of sitting with ambiguity.
Think about the last time you used a large language model like ChatGPT. You type a prompt, and you expect it to start generating words instantly.
Instantly.
If it paused for 30 seconds to, think or sit in silence, you'd probably refresh the page assuming the server was totally broken.
Oh, for sure.
We've designed AI to eradicate the void. It basically assumes an empty space is a technical defect.
To understand why that matters, we have to look at how these models actually work under the hood. An LLM operates on token prediction.
Token prediction.
Yeah, it is mathematically calculating the next most probable word based on its massive training data. By definition, it cannot pause to wobble.
It can't hesitate.
Right, it cannot experience unformed thoughts or contradictions. It is mathematically forced to generate a confident, coherent answer, even if it has to hallucinate to do so.
When AI rushes to fill every single blank space with a confident explanation, it destroys the necessary space for indecision.
It does.
It creates this digital environment where every question must have an immediate authoritative answer, and we are training ourselves to expect that same instant binary output from human beings.
The source material advocates for a concept called reflective humanism in tech design.
Reflective humanism. What does that look like?
Well, we need systems that don't just act as rapid-fire answering machines. We need systems that actually preserve the space before an answer forms. AI that leaves room for multiple interpretations, rather than compressing a complex query into a single flattened fact.
Because otherwise we are just teaching our machines our own worst habits, like our inability to sit with uncertainty.
Exactly.
And when you scale this up beyond personal technology, you start looking at how entire civilizations operate. The texts introduce the concept of civilizational silences, which is just profound.
It really is. At a macro level, there are massive parts of the human experience that exist entirely in silence, simply because our societal observation devices aren't calibrated to record them.
The sources list these heavy examples, like unrecorded domestic labor, or pain that defies traditional medical language, or peripheral histories that just never make it into the dominant textbooks.
Just because the dominant language of a society hasn't translated these experiences into neat binary data points doesn't mean they're voids. It doesn't mean nothing is happening. They are simply existing in an open silence that our civilization hasn't learned how to read yet.
We really have to recognize the limits of our own ability to observe. Whether it's at the micro level of a text message or the macro level of historical records, we have to stop assuming that unseen or silent automatically equates to non-existent.
The overarching lesson from all these disciplines
Mm.
is that silence is rarely a true void.
So bringing this all back down to the ground, what does this actually mean for you navigating your daily life?
The practical application.
Yeah, the core takeaway to distill from this entire stack of research is that silence acts as a crucial phase buffer. It's that mechanical clutch we talked about.
Right.
It slows down a relationship just enough so that two people with entirely different internal processing speeds don't just crash into forced artificial conclusions.
It stops us from forcing a messy, beautiful, completely unformed human reality into a neat, destructive little box just to soothe our own anxiety about the unknown.
So the next time someone goes quiet on you, try to intercept your own panic. Check your need for that negative certainty.
Take a breath.
Exactly. Ask yourself, are they actually slamming the door, or are they just using that invisible processing layer to find the right words? Sometimes waiting without forcing a binary answer is actually the most profound, respectful way to keep a connection alive.
It requires immense emotional regulation, I'm not going to lie. But granting that space preserves the authenticity and the difference of the other person.
I want to leave you with a final provocative thought to mull over today. It's inspired by the sociological concept of asynchronous relationships.
Well, this is a great concept.
We've been talking mostly about immediate text messages and daily interactions, but let's push that idea further out. If we can truly accept that deep relationships don't require perfectly synchronized, real-time responses to survive, how might that change the way we view the people we haven't spoken to in years?
It completely reframes the architecture of a long-term relationship. It removes the necessity of constant maintenance.
Think about someone you were once really close to but haven't spoken to in, say, 5 years. We normally categorize that as a failed relationship, a broken connection.
Yeah, all's friend.
But is it possible that a 5-year gap isn't actually an ending at all? What if it is simply a very long, macro-level open silence, just a
Yeah.
wide space, waiting for a future path back?
A fascinating way to look at it.
Next time you see those 3 typing dots vanish, maybe they aren't long forever. Maybe they are just taking the long way around.